Namaste and welcome to this exciting new episode of Sattology, debunking mythology. Sat means truth, logos means a study or science, Sattology means a science of truth or study of truth. Opposite of that, antonym of that is mythology, which means a science of fake or study of fake, lie, or imagination. Today we have a very, very special guest, and we are talking about what happened to Hindus of Pakistan and Bangladesh also to some extent. And also we're going to talk about a little bit about Indian think tanks. Last time we spoke on American think tanks and some of you were very upset. And so we are going to be equally devastating against the Indian think tanks, hopefully, but it all depends on the new guest. You love his shows and you love the candor that he brings to us. So without delay, let us welcome Sri Abhijit Iyer Mitra. Abhijit, my biggest question to all the people and most of the Americans ask, it is very difficult to tell Americans that Hindus were completely wiped out in Pakistan. So if you say, what happened to Hindus in Pakistan, what is your view?
Look, the wipeout didn't happen just after partition, right? It happened a long time before that, to the point that the population was brought down to almost zero very, very quickly. In the urban areas, it was a lot less. In the rural areas, it was a lot greater. So, for example, in what was Khyber Pakhtunkhwa today, that is the Northwest Frontier Province, the Muslim population was 98%, 99% almost. In areas like Punjab and Sindh, in Karachi and Lahore, they did have a higher Muslim populations, but they were pretty much ethnically cleansed. And the myth is that it happened during partition. It actually happened a lot before that, not during partition. But this is a systematic process we keep seeing throughout South Asia. You even see it in Tamil Nadu and Kerala these days, where there's certain ghettoization and kicking out of minorities where a certain religion takes over. So it's a very, very natural process, deliberate, I suspect. The problem is, because it's not very well documented, we can only go by statistics after they've actually happened. We don't exactly know how the process works, except well-documented cases of the threat of violence and the implementation of that threat on occasion, and the refusal of the state to protect its own citizens.
We have seen a similar thing happening in Bangladesh also.
Yes.
And similar process happened in Bangladesh where the Hindus are practically non-existent. And we did a show on Bangladesh on the culture of Namhatta, which was very, very widespread. There were 57,000 Namhatta in 1947, 57,000. And today practically they are not there. So do you think that the history plays an important role in Indian think tanks?
No, Indian think tanks are mostly about events. They're not think tanks, they're event tanks. Indian think tanks seldom get any money for primary research. In fact, go to any Indian think tank and tell me, where have you seen primary data research being done? It's almost never done. The only ones that actually do primary data research on India are probably, say, Rick Rosso at CSIS in America. I mean, they actually they mine, and it's very tough work, because in India, finding data is a nightmare. They do all the data collection, collation, and synthesis, which is also why you will find that Rick is probably the least political of the lot. He's all about data and facts.
India being the land of all these great thinkers, Munis, and all those people, and I consider you as one of very good thinker. You think out of the box.
We used to be a land of great thinkers. About 700 AD, when we finally discovered the zero, we decided to collectively reduce ourselves to zero because we were so taken in by the concept. We're the living proof of zero.
This is a very stark reminder, and that's what we expect.
But it's the truth. You look at it technically, The Mayas discovered the zero about 200 years before India did, completely independently. And within a few hundred years, they ceased to exist. So it's like that. Once you invent the zero, you become a zero. It's a civilizational thing.
That's right. I mean, I never thought in that way, but I can see now what you're saying about zero. The another thing which comes to mind is the Indian think tanks is they actually interpret Western think tanks into Indian language. That's the only work they have been doing. Like for example, the Indo-China relationships. Most of the Indian viewpoint of Indo-China relationships can be sourced back to American think tanks or British think tanks. What is your view on that?
And that is all of Indian think tankery. It's not just India-China relations. Because see, where is the money? If you remember, sometime back we discussed India is the only country where in a PhD, your budget is around 80,000 rupees. 80,000 rupees is what? Slightly $1,200 or something like that. You're meant to travel to a country, stay there, learn about it, get in-depth knowledge in $1,200. How are you going to do it? It may not even cover your flight tickets, leave alone anything else once you're there, right? So primary research is non-existent in India, period. Be it in the Indian Foreign Service, it's too small to be doing any of it, and too underfunded to be doing any of it, too caught up in its own bureaucratic and political games to be doing any of it. Uh, 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 India's academia is exactly like that. It's too underfunded because it's a small pie. We've discussed this on the program before. You need about an education budget of $500 to $600 billion a year, given the number of young people coming out, just to become a factory floor workforce. I'm not even talking about becoming an academic. Just to become a blue collar laborer on a factory floor, you need about $500 to $600 billion a year. We spend $20 billion, out of which about $8 billion, depending on the figures, $8 to $12 billion is spent by the top 1% on a foreign education, which means the government only spends between 8 to 12 billion. Where is 8 to 12 billion and where is 5 to 600 billion? Right. So there's a gap. Indian think tanks are no different. They squander most of their money in events because their job is to put their funders in touch on platforms with ministers and bureaucrats and things like that. And that is what they do. So the policy impact is next to zero. Why? Because anyway, you're not going to the ground and digging up primary source data and things like that. So remember, India is a data paucity society. India is the nightmare that happens if you go woke. There's a saying, if you go woke, you go broke. Well, it's actually, if you go woke, you go India. Because in India, policy is made based on feelings, not based on data.
No, one of the things is I'm really surprised sometimes the Indian government, whether it's state government or whether it's the central government, they spend 15 to 16,000 rupees an hour on an average with PwC, Accenture, and other foreign companies who do the consulting work for India for any feasibility study. And everybody knows that most of the American think tanks, they regularly infiltrate these consulting organizations to take data on India. Now, but if that money, and these people, they employ Indians, most of them, they employ Indians from IIMs or any other colleges. Now, if an Indian company would like to hire the same people and work with them, the charges drop down to say, and I'm talking per hourly figure here, drop down to say 6,000, 7,000. But they do not hesitate to spend money on a foreign brand. What is this mindset?
So remember, it's branding, right? If you buy a Titan watch made in India, is one of the few countries that still manufactures watches. If you buy a Titan watch, you will spend something like under $100 on a good Titan analog watch, maybe up to about $200 with a tourbillon and a minute repeater. The same thing if you put a stamp on it saying A Lange und Söhne or Patek Philippe, will become about $200,000 minimum. Right? So it's the same thing. It's the same people that a local consultancy will employ. But as long as you have saying PricewaterhouseCooper is like saying Patek Philippe compared to a Titan. So it's entirely the brand. it's this need for foreign validation, but it's also when things go wrong, you can say, but look, PricewaterhouseCoopers said so. It's like, you landed up at the wrong time, but my Patek Philippe said so. It's that kind of a mentality, number one. Number two, there's the inferiority complex that you need the foreign stamp of approval. Acute inferiority complex with this government, much more so, because remember, they're low class, socially upwardly mobile yuppies. And remember, in the Indian context, that's very different from the American context. In America, it's all about making a great life for yourself and being go-getters and things like that. In India, it is not about making something out of yourself; it's about showing off. So the connotation in India is fundamentally going to be a condescending, derogatory one. Number three, the problem here is that with it doesn't matter what it is. Now, if you buy an Alanga Unzona or if you buy a Patek Philippe, you will get things like minute repeaters and you'll get truly amazing complications, which you wouldn't in a Titan watch. The problem in PricewaterhouseCoopers is it's an outsourced model. They'll give you exactly what the Indian risk analysis would give you, except it's basically if Patek Philippe started buying Titan watches and stamping it with Patek Philippe on it. There's a joke about this particular thing that, there was a competition between an Indian, American. This was during the it's a Cold War joke. There was an Indian, a Soviet, and an American on who would make the best plane. And the Americans made the engine, the Russians made the body, but the Indians stamped "Made in India" on it and won the competition. So it's like that.
There is in artificial intelligence, there is a very famous logic, and my background is in technology, a lot of technology. And in artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligence is a concept which can be custom made for every civilization. So right now, majority of the artificial intelligence models are working on a Western mindset based. Most of it is used in military applications nowadays, not in the civilian application space. In Indian context, with the Indian think tanks, I have not seen a single Indian strategy oriented AI algorithms to be used in this context. Now, in America, for America, there is a Pentagon funded think tanks, very well who are those. I won't take any names here, but most of those Pentagon funded think tanks are building a narrative for the American future wars all over the world using AI. Chinese have done their own thing, but again, Chinese AI routines are regularly sourced from Microsoft and other places, which is not their original invention. And I discredit Chinese completely over there. But India, and it is very surprising that IBM Research Labs, uh, which is a major lab in the US based out of San Jose, now they also use Indian brains to build up an American AI algorithms. Most of them. Now, where is India lacking? The same Indians are performing for America, but there is not a single Indian think tank which can think out of the box. What is your viewpoint on this?
Sorry, could you condense that? That was
Yeah, from the AI point of view, where is the Indian original AI thought process which can
there is no Indian, forget AI. There is no Indian original thought process on anything right now. All right, we are essentially a cut, copy, paste society. What you call academic plagiarism is what India does. We celebrate it as frugal innovation, but what do we do first? We don't do anything first. We're at best a price point innovator like our moon mission and things. It's not we're the first people to go to the moon. It's just that we had the cheapest moon mission ever, right? So in some places, like in ISRO, because going to the moon at cut price cost is an admirable task. But in most cases, cut, copy, paste never succeeds, right? Because it is contextual, especially in the human context of societies. Innovations and solutions from abroad seldom fit in here. So, at everything, we're at an extremely low level of innovation. It just doesn't work. When there are innovators, their innovations get bought or they themselves move abroad.
The world over, the policing has seen a lot of change in terms of thought process and other things. But in India, the policing is still a very colonial concept. So, do you think there is room for innovation in the Indian policing acts where they can change the way the world talks about policing than India? Is there
See,
a
it's not just policing. See, because remember, like we've said so often, there is no one solution. It's a system of systems problem. So you have to fix policing. First of all, there is the issue of numbers of police. Second, the quality of policing. Third, where are you recruiting from? Because from a third-rate education system, you're going to get third-rate police, right? Then, when everything else is politically controlled, it is going to be a heavily political police. If it is not political in a third world country, it is going to descend into being an independent extortion body, which is even more dangerous. I would much rather have political control. Fifth, it works into several nexuses of crime and things, which you then have to disentangle. Are you willing to do that? Seventh, you have issues with a corrupt judiciary, a highly erratic judiciary. There is no jurisprudence in India as a joke. What is said today may not be valid tomorrow, etc., etc., etc. There is no set pattern on things. Your regulatory mechanisms are a joke. They mostly use as coercive tools. So when your entire system is rotten, reforming just one thing doesn't change anything. It has to be systemic reforms.
we have seen in the case of British intelligence, American intelligence, and other countries' intelligence, they play a very close role with their business communities to strike a deal which is favored to their own countries. And in India, that concept is very much ridiculed in a mindset also and in process also. Do you think that India recognizes the importance of business intelligence, which is also part of the
No, no, no.
CIA?
We don't recognize the importance of any primary data. Okay, leave alone business intelligence, commercial espionage, none of this. All right. So primary source data, primary source intelligence is un-Indian. To do it is to be a Pakistani. Well, I don't think the Pakistanis do it very well either, but that's a different matter. But to do it is to be un-Indian.
So in the recent, we all know what is happening in Afghanistan. You have spoken in detail in many videos. Therefore, I'm not going to touch it. So for those of you who would like to know his views, you can check out many discussions that he has been part of. In the case of, we see the neighborhoods of India. Indian intelligence is considered the world's oldest. Intelligence Bureau of India is the world's oldest intelligence agency, which was a colonial mindset, which was designed to control their own people rather than, like, the British was scared of the Indian revolutionaries. Now, the same model is continuing even today. I think, according to me, and I am very much disconnected in those sources. So please forgive me, anyone who takes offense on this one.
But
But
but but but why does that surprise you? Why does that surprise you? Because nothing's really changed. It's still an exploitative, wealth extractive, mercantilist divide and rule pattern of governance. America's genius was that it moved away from the British mercantilist model, which is deliberately to keep all your colonies poor so that your industrial products can be sold. So it creates an artificially unequal market. The American model was pure capitalism. If something becomes too expensive to produce, give it to another country to produce. So what happens in India today is that the money isn't being siphoned off to Britain. The money is siphoned off to Indians, to private pockets of Indians. So there's nothing new about it. And it's that same mentality of divide and rule everywhere in the government. So there's been basically no mind change in the government.
now, with the recent happenings in the neighborhood of India, where India had a primordial role connected to all those countries in the neighborhood, whether it's Iran, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, or Pakistan. Now we have seen that Pakistan is becoming a threat to itself and to their own people, eh, to some extent that the people from Sindh and Balochistan are asking India to openly support it. And POK is obviously their regular protests, pro-India protests. But we have not seen any Indian intelligence acting to work with them or to work to provide them some help?
But forget that. Remember, there was a roaring insurgency in Balochistan where this government took over in 2014. They abandoned that insurgency and sent it down the drain. All the assets were built up, got slaughtered left, right, and center, and were left defenseless. So this is not new. This is not new. This kind of sort of lackadaisical, personalized approach to intelligence gathering, data, etc. It's very, very common in India. Historically, we have never learned from our mistakes because there's never been an archiving process and an institutional handover of knowledge, which you see again here. Balochistan is completely pacified, well, more or less pacified right now. Why? Because we washed our hands off it. So, it is what it is. I think acting on Kashmir is a bit much. It's outside the IQ level of this current government.
Now, in the case of China moving out of CPAC, and I don't think so that's a long process. This is just a temporary thing here. There'll be stopgap arrangements and Chinese military is going to take over all the security. That's what is going to happen. So, and the sovereignty of Pakistan was never a sovereign nation. It has always been a tool of somebody else. So isn't that a security threat to India? Because now everybody else would work through Pakistan against India.
Look, I think I mean, how obvious. It's like saying
Even I can see that.
Threat to India is like saying the sun rises in the east. The question is, what have you done about it? Right? If you look at national resolve, have you built yourself up to the point where the power differential is so great, like it became between America and Mexico? Remember, America and Mexico had hostile border clashes right up to the First World War, almost, right up to 1900s at least. I think the last Mexican incursion into America was sometime in 1901 or two. It was Omar Bradley, I think, who tackled a lot of those incursions. And yet the differential became so great that Mexico just accepted what America was, and that Texas and California are no longer part of Mexico. Right? You don't even want to go around that path. So here's the thing: Pakistan may be a threat, but when you yourself are a third world, third rate shithole, there's not much you can do about it. Because remember, being a third world shithole is not just about poor people on the streets. It's about a low human mental development. It is about a low academic development, a low intellectual development, a low problem solving development, a poor early forecasting, early warning and forecasting, about a poor analytical framework and analytical capacity. And that lack of human capital shows across every single sector. Why is that surprising? Why is it that we think somehow that our military planners and our intelligence planners are somehow better than our economic planners, when in fact, it's just one giant clusterfuck?
No, very, very valid points. And, this is time for wake up call, but I do not think so that's going to happen soon.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The Nazi leadership, Britain and America decided against killing them. You know why? Because they were so high on heroin that they went on making mistakes. Our leadership is a bit like that across party lines. They're so high on ideology and dogma and whatever. And mind you, ideology and dogma, like Karl Marx used to say, religion is the opium of the masses. In India, basically, bad education and trashy dogma is worse than heroin. It's like crystal meth.
So one of the things which comes to my mind is the very much about the co-vaccine. Now, everywhere in the world, some of the American leading researchers in San Diego, he's a Nobel laureate. He said the world's best vaccine is what developed by India, Bharat Biotech. He did not take the example of Serum Institute of India because it was a copy paste of American vaccine, which was rejected everywhere else. Now, even America doesn't use it. So AstraZeneca, as compared to AstraZeneca or any other vaccine which Pfizer or Moderna has produced, biotech has been recognized as one of the best for all. And also, it doesn't use an animal product. This is the first vaccine which doesn't use an animal product. Now, why India is not able to sell? Because this is the biggest strategic move for the Indian government, that this will make a giant out of an Indian startup.
So, see, it's very simple. First of all, Bharat Biotech also has a stick up its ass. Okay, they haven't been particularly proactive on things. They have done dodgy deals with Brazil clearly, when or they could have done it direct, straight, whatever they did not, which is why Brazil has now cancelled these deals to buy the Covaxin, this thing. So, it doesn't matter if you have a great product. Ultimately, it's how you market it, how proactive you are, how you go about things. And to be fair, Biotech's management really has a stick up their ass. Uh, 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 if I were a board member at Bharat Biotech, I would ask for the firing of the entire management. But in India, that doesn't happen because essentially your board are cronies and ass lickers rented by the family to sit there and give just tick off the checklist of corporate governance required by regulatory authorities, and that's about it. So they may be very good medicine developers, but they are very bad marketers, and they're generally a bad company in terms of either marketing or selling or anything like that.
Another good example, like there's a colonial and slave mindset again. Elon Musk congratulating ISRO. Now, ISRO is, everybody knows, it represents the people of India. It's a taxpayer funded organization. And the ISRO is very happy of that particular. I love the admiration by a private individual from America. It's not the American government saying it, it's a private individual saying it. But why Indians become so happy if somebody praises them for something which they have done on their own?
But that's classic Indian. Why does that surprise you? We never promote our own. We always. How many times do I have to tell you the crab joke? I've told you the crab joke already once or twice. No? So in Germany, in Bremerhaven port, there's three crates of crabs. The Japanese and the Korean crabs are sealed tight with extra strong nails. The crate of crabs imported from in India is open, and the guy goes and asks them, well, why are the Indian crabs kept open? And the answer comes, well, if the Japanese and Korean crabs, if one tries to leave, everybody, they form a crab chain and they help as many out as possible. In India, if one tries to escape, everybody gangs up together and pulls that crab down. So there's no need to seal Indian crabs. That's the mentality out here.
One last question in this series is Singapore. Now, a small island state, very tiny, like smaller than Mumbai or maybe the size of Mumbai. They have their city state has economically performed way higher than any other city of the world, including New York to some extent, because New York has the whole country backing it up. In terms of per capita production is way higher than anybody else. And we do not see such example of city states coming up, not saying independent, but a hub like Bangalore or hub like Mumbai becoming the hub of trade for the entire world, where they can geographically very well do it. What is your reason for that? What do you think, why it
You
is
know,
not happening?
if you have hubs, just designating something a special economic zone doesn't change anything, because they're still subject to a lot of Indian laws, regulations, etc., bad electricity. Why are they going to come here when they still have to buy land at market prices here, as opposed to go to China or Vietnam, where you buy land based on yield and then get electricity 24/7? They don't have to manage all the other factors of production. India's only USP is that its labor is cheap. But remember, even in an SEZ, in a special economic zone, India's labor is unionized. It is very trashy, low quality labor because of the kind of educational input that goes in. And so high quality products simply can't be manufactured out there. There's a whole set of problems. You might not get electricity. The local chaps might be demanding bribes, etc., etc., etc. There is no single window clearance. So there's nothing coming in. And then, of course, there's the problem that instead of starting with a pilot project, use it as a test, see what's going right, what's going wrong, do it as an experimental basis. Even the basics of the scientific revolution, which were developed in the 16 and 1700s in Europe, basic methods of experimentation and testing aren't used in India today. And there's nothing you can do about it.
India, sorry, the one more last one. India has been is the only organic capital of the world. I mean, I was shocked to know, other than BT cotton, everything else in India is organic. BT cotton is the only place where Monsanto came to India. So India has a great potential to become the organic food produce, even the seed exporter nation of the world, I'm saying, because everywhere else, including US, has no organic crop left. Genetically, there's nothing in US which is not genetically modified. Don't you think it's a big opportunity for India today?
It's not organic. Let's be very clear about it, because India's use of fertilizers and things is horrendous. The use of pesticides is horrendous. That is why India has been removed from the list. Indian organic certificates are no longer taken seriously anywhere in the world, because, for it to be classified organic, nothing in a 5 kilometer radius can be using pesticides and fertilizers and things like that. In India, the land holding sizes itself are so small that is not the case. So the organic certification is based entirely on a lack of documentation. We don't know if pesticides have been used. We don't know if fertilizers have been used. Therefore, it is organic, right? The lack of genetically modified crops, again, is a function of this, because you haven't grown into a high yield. At the same time, it is wrong to say that it has not happened. Remember, the rice and wheat we grow today were specifically famine-resistant rices and wheats, which we started growing. Our entire stock of 200,000 different varieties of rice were taken to the research institute in Manila and destroyed out there. Today, we're lucky if we can get even 40, 50 varieties of rice. I have friends doing it, heritage rice, trying to get it, and they've not been able to resurrect more than about 16, 17 kinds. All right. So most of the rice produced here is in fact a stunted, because, shorter the growing, earlier the yield, as opposed to a long growth time, etc. So they are in fact heavily modified. They're not the advanced genetic modification that, say, Monsanto does, but that doesn't mean they're not modified.
Thank you, Abhijit, for your insight. And I think it's a wake-up call for most of the Indians. I think your talks are maybe sarcastic.
Giving wake-up calls to Indians is kind of futile, because Indians never wake up. I think when the Ramayana was written and the story of Kumbhakarna was written in there, I think it was a metaphor for what India was going to become. And ultimately, Kumbhakarna's 6 months sleeps are more like 60 years sleeps, from which you don't ever get up. And in the end, when you do get up, you're killed.
No, in the earlier 90s or something, there was a coined phrase by some people, Hindu rate of growth. Now, at least India has survived. Hindus have worked together, but all the nations who make a mockery of that, they have failed. Pakistan has failed, which was the biggest proposition, Hindu rate of growth.
So I don't take that particular, but Bangladesh is going way ahead of us. Today, Bangladesh's Human Development Index and its per capita income is higher than India. So, India is that unique country that lies in the gutter and looks down on the rest of the world. It's like sitting in a sewer in New York City and laughing at Michael Bloomberg saying, ha, 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 look, your Rolls Royce only has, 30 inches of leg room. Look at my gutter. It's full of shit, but it's got like 500 inches of leg room in Manhattan Central.
Most of the Human Development Index, all these indexes are made by the Western nations to make a mockery of other countries. And I think those parameters...
But they're fairly accurate. Remember, the Western standard of living they are self-referential. I don't think they're there to make a mockery, but they are self-referential based on their levels of development. And I think they're an absolutely accurate indication of the differences in development.
But if
Because
you,
if you go to say Austria or Germany or Italy, uh, 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 it is real. You see the development, you see the infrastructure out there. You come to India, you will see it's a dirty, stinky shithole where people are have no social security net, have no education, nothing. Life is a living nightmare. You're extremely vulnerable. Where your one breadwinner dies, and then you're absolute destitute in penury. So even your poverty rates are highly fabricated. Your urbanization rates are highly fabricated. So, it's not incorrect. So forget the agenda out there. Just look at the stats. Because remember, when there's stats, you can always remove the agenda from it and give it a fresh look.
that's right.
So in terms of human development index, I think it would be foolish to say that somehow it is looking down on India. India deserves to be looked down upon. India deserves to be spat upon.
I'll quote a Western thought process. There's a very good friend of mine, and she has studied the world mental health statistics. And if you look at that, USA, New Zealand, and this data will shock you. Is 2017 report actually, not 2021, but 2017 report. US, New Zealand, Norway, Iran, and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. The mental diseases are equal. They're worse, like the one of the highest mental diseases on the planet in these five countries. And the US is compared. India, Vietnam, and Burma, Thailand, and China data is always fudged up. They have the least mental diseases. This is an independent report by an American Mental Health Professionals Association, NAM. So now if you look at this, then contrast with the Human Development Index. Now, if you look at both, compare the two statistics, you'll see the mental diseases are high, but the Human Development Index is also high. How is it possible?
It's called first world problems. Okay, it's first world problems. When you have more, your immediate needs decrease, but other ancillary needs start increasing. Now, in India, when you don't know where your next meal is coming from, where your treatment for your cancer is coming from, you then have no time to think about other things. So you live in the moment, you enjoy it. I suspect if you go back to the Stone Age people would have been very happy because they lived in the here and now. They had a short, brutish life. They never knew when they were going to get killed. Low level sustained violence, which used to result in a 25 to 33% mortality rate. You would be dead before you were a 26 to 35-year-old would be a very old man in even in Neolithic societies. So it's that same this thing. And mind you, you still have this kind of rubbish being trotted out even in Western academia. There's a fellow who went to study how eating a natural diet increases the natural resistance of your body. And he goes to the Namib desert, lives like a Namib nomad for a while, and comes back saying, see, that's such a healthy diet. Because, the number of antibodies in your feces go up. So they are healthier. Excuse me, a Namib nomad will die around 34, 35 years of age max. In Europe, you'll be alive till about 85, 86 at least. So, that isn't a very fair measure.
Thank you so much, Abhijit. It's always a wake up call. And I know you are tired. We are also, we also want to, but we want to continue our effort. We want to keep on showing the mirror to most of us. But thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.